Thanks for being with us. President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff is to meet President Putin in Moscow today to present him with an amended plan to end the war in Ukraine. President Zelensky has said that Russia must not be rewarded for invading Ukraine, and his priorities during peace talks are maintaining sovereignty and ensuring strong security guarantees. While the Ukrainian leader was speaking in Paris, where he held a meeting with the French president Emmanuel Macron and rallied support from other European allies, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and about a dozen other European leaders joined them on the phone. Mr. Zelensky is now in Ireland for a state visit. War should not become a profitable business so that others would not want to repeat such actions. That is why we take principled positions on sanctions, on accountability for war crimes, on the legal status of our territories currently occupied by Russian forces, on Russian assets, and on the obligation of reconstruction. The aggressor must pay for the aggression. The stronger the world's united stance on these points, the more secure and lasting peace will be. Well, today's meeting between President Putin and Steve Witkoff comes hours after Russia said its forces had captured the frontline town of Provos in eastern Ukraine. Although the Ukrainian military corps say their troops are holding the northern part of the city, a key transport hub, it's been fought over for months, and its fall, if confirmed, would complicate Ukrainian attempts to resupply its front lines. Let's get more on this with our correspondent in Kiev, James Waterhouse. James, tell us more about the significance of Provozk and what we know about the situation on the ground. Well, I mean clearly the situation there has been deteriorating for some time if it is completely captured by Russian forces as is. Looking likely at some stage. It will not dramatically change the dynamics of the front lines. I mean there are, I think what is more significant is what as President Zelensky admits Ukraine could be forced to give up. Provozk has been vastly destroyed now over the past few years as Russia has ground its way inside the city, but it's what Ukraine could have to give up in an unfavorable peace deal, which I think is more significant for the country, i.e. the remaining part of the eastern Donbass region which Russia mostly occupies. What is also significant is the timing of these claims. You've got the Russian Defense Ministry releasing these carefully curated videos of Vladimir Putin again in military fatigues in occupied Ukraine, being briefed by his officers with the claim that 2 cities have been captured. There may be some battlefield reality to those claims, but also we have to consider that this U.S. delegation, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, are going to arrive in the Kremlin today, where the Americans and certainly the Ukrainians will be hoping that Russia can be convinced to compromise to pause fighting in any way. When we consider what we've just discussed with the capturing of these towns, certainly from the Ukrainian perspective, it doesn't look like Moscow is ready to put the brakes on in any way with its continued invasion of this country. And I'm just seeing that obviously Zelensky is in Ireland at the moment, still trying to maintain European support, and the Irish government is expected to approve an extra £110 million or €125 million in support for Ukraine later today, as Zelensky's been in Dublin. I mean in terms of where you think the negotiations are with seeing this key meeting in Moscow expected later, James, what is the sense there of the possibility of progress? Well, I do think out of at any point of Donald Trump's return to office, this is a peace process that is starting to move. I'm not going to say that progress is going to be forthcoming. But we are seeing a peace plan, a document which has taken many forms, make its way through. Initially it was conjured up by the U.S. clearly with a lot of Russian input. We've now seen the Ukrainians once again gain some concessions, notably through the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Discussions that are acknowledged to have been extremely difficult by both the Ukrainian and American sides. But this is a document being passed around. There is a level of engagement by all sides as well. However, what is the great uncontrollable for Ukraine is how the Kremlin will react. And we typically, when Mr. Witkoff passes through the Kremlin, this is his 6th visit. We might have a brief clip of both men shaking hands, but we won't necessarily learn what has been agreed in that meeting. And I think if we look at how the Kremlin has reacted in the past, and if we look at what Ukraine accuses of Russia of doing time and time again, we suspect that Russia, there is a chance it will say yes, this is a basis for agreement as it said in the past, but there are still some what? It's previously called core issues, core reasons behind the war that need to be addressed because we know Vladimir Putin is scheduled to head off to India on an official visit and that is the charge squared by Ukraine that Russia is just killing time. It is happy with the gains it is making. Look at what the messaging it is putting out today. And the key question also is what America would do if that happens again. Will it what sanction more of Russia's key industries for example? Or will it turn back to Ukraine and say look we've gone back and out for today are signs of any concessions being made by Ukraine or agreeing to America's pressure and demands? What we shouldn't really where would they lie any possible concessions the key focus of talks between Ukraine and America are territorial concessions Russia in that plan presented by the Americans they are demanding that Ukraine vacate the remaining 20% of the eastern Donbass region which for Ukraine is an absolute non-starter they do not want to do it. The question is without America's support, will they be able to keep on fighting for that territory and other parts of Ukraine which Russia wants to take? And how significant in your view is the Kremlin saying that Russian forces have captured Pavlovsk? This may or may not be true. We've just seen pictures of Russian forces in the center of Pakhovsk, but its practical significance as a strategic transport hub is gone. It has been gone for a while now. So it's essentially a fight over ruins right now. When it comes to Russia's position, Vladimir Putin said last Thursday that Russia would stop fighting in Ukraine only after Ukraine withdraws from position currently occupies. There's no point in signing any deals with Vladimir Zelensky, according to Vladimir Putin. So, Russia's position is as maximalist as ever. And frankly, America has given Russia a very little reason to change that position.